Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in Freshman English, and we turn now in your hymnals to page 967, the great Chekhov, the Russian writer, and a little piece of comedy called The Inspector General. I want to start on 967 really quickly at level 2B, and I want to start with some notion of comedy. Now, let's put this in our notes right away. We think of comedy today a little bit differently from the academic rendering of what we mean by comedy. I mean, it's true that the majority of the shows that you guys watch, you think of as kind of comedic or funny. In other words, I even have freshmen who say, if the show don't make me laugh, I don't watch the show. That is to say, if it makes me laugh, it's comedy. But traditionally, comedy has been defined as something quite a bit larger in its understanding than simply ha-ha funny, okay? Take a look. A form of drama, I'm reading with you now in 967, a form of drama that's lighter in mood than tragedy, ends happily, aims primarily to amuse. Humor in comic plays may arise from one or more of the following elements. You'll want to put these in your notes as bullet pointed for 3. You can have a funny character or funny character names, fast-paced, witty dialogue. You can have what we call incongruous situations. In other words, stuff that doesn't fit together. They give examples like a woman in high heels stomping grapes or a clown conducting a meeting. And then finally, character, this is huge, write it down. Misunderstandings and mistaken identities. When people don't understand exactly what's going on. Now, because that's the case, often humor is created by, this is a key term, get it in your notes, dramatic irony. Now, what exactly is dramatic irony? We know irony in general is something that is expected does not happen, right? That is to say, the opposite of maybe what one would expect. Read with me. Dramatic irony is a form of irony that occurs when the audience knows or understands something that the character does not. As a result, the character's statements of behavior are often misguided or inappropriate, provoking laughter from the knowing audience. Now, as we read here, we're going to look for ways in which, obviously, Chekhov, the author, will create dramatic irony by providing information to the audience while withholding it from some of the characters. And obviously, we're going to try and draw some conclusions as well by considering dialogue and, put this in your notes at 2B, stage directions. What we mean by stage directions is that the author, in this case Chekhov, will write things that he'll put into his script that he wants the audience to infer or understand. It might have to do with dress, it might have to do with actions of the actors or whatever. I'm on page 969 really quickly, and we'll meet Chekhov just for a moment, 1860 to 1904. Just read with me. The grandson of a former serf who had purchased his freedom, Anton Chekhov grew up in a small Russian coastal town. He later attended medical school in Moscow where he began writing humorous stories. Writing soon became his major focus. Chekhov wrote many short stories as well as several acclaimed plays including The Seagull in 1896, Uncle Vanya in 1897, and Three Sisters in 1901. His characters range from old peasants to young society women, from those whom life has treated kindly to those who are disappointed. Chekhov treats them all with respect and sympathy. His humor, his ability to portray characters of great depth and authenticity helped Chekhov to become a beloved author in Russia and then for the rest of the world. By the way, the background for the play Inspectors General. The Inspector General is set in Imperial Russia when the country was ruled by an emperor czar. To oversee the many officials in Russia's vast expanse, the czars employed inspectors general. They observed how local schools, courts, hospitals were functioning. Many citizens resented the czar's authority, however, and inspector generals were often unwelcome. We'll turn over to 970. We've got now the curtain going up to reveal falling snow, a cart facing away from us, and we're going to have the storyteller enter, who begins to read the story. Meanwhile, the traveler enters. He's a middle-aged man of urban appearance, wearing dark glasses, a long overcoat with its collar turned up. He's carrying a small traveling bag. He climbs into the cart and sits facing us. Now, when we read this, and we have a professional reader read for us, and we'll have actors doing this on the audio. But I want you to try to imagine in your mind's eye what the stage looks like as these characters are exchanging this dialogue. And, of course, let's pay attention to dramatic irony or comedy. What is, if there is, anything funny? This will be my question to you when we finish. What is, if there is anything humorous or funny about this passage? All right, here we go with the Inspector General. Read along.
The Inspector General by Anton Chekhov, adapted by Michael Frayn. The curtain goes up to reveal falling snow and a cart facing away from us. Enter the storyteller, who begins to read the story. Meanwhile, the traveler enters. He is a middle-aged man of urban appearance, wearing dark glasses and a long overcoat with its collar turned up. He is carrying a small traveling bag. He climbs into the cart and sits facing us. The Inspector General.
In deepest incognito, first by express train, then along back roads, Pyotr Pavlovich Posudin was hastening toward the little town of N, to which he had been summoned by an anonymous letter. "I'll take them by surprise," he thought to himself. "I'll come down on them like a thunderbolt out of the blue. I can just imagine their faces when they hear who I am."
Enter the driver, a peasant, who climbs onto the cart so that he is sitting with his back to us, and the cart begins to trundle slowly away from us.
And when he thought to himself for long enough, he fell into conversation with the driver of the cart. What did he talk about? About himself, of course.
Exit the storyteller.
I gather you've got a new Inspector General in these parts.
True enough.
Know anything about him?
The driver turns and looks at the traveler, who turns his coat collar up a little higher.
Know anything about him? Of course we do. We know everything about all of them up there. Every last little clerk. We know the color of his hair and the size of his boots.
He turns back to the front, and the traveler permits himself a slight smile.
So, what do you reckon? Any good, is he?
The driver turns around.
Oh, yes. He's a good one, this one.
Really?
Did one good thing straight off.
What was that?
He got rid of the last one. Holy terror he was. Hear him coming 5 miles off. Let's say he's going to this little town. Somewhere like we're going, say. He'd let all the world know about it a month before. So now he's on his way, say, and it's like thunder and lightning coming down the road. And when he gets where he's going, he has a good sleep. He has a good eat and drink. And then he starts. Stamps his feet, shouts his head off. Then he has another good sleep. And off he goes.
But the new one's not like that.
Oh, no. The new one goes everywhere on the quiet. Creeps around like a cat. Don't want no one to see him. Don't want no one to know who he is. Say, he's going into this town down the road here. Someone there sent him a letter on the sly, let's say. Things going on here you should know about. Something of that kind. Well, now, he creeps out of his office so none of them up there see him go. He hops on a train just like anyone else, just like you or me. When he gets off, he don't go jumping into a cab or nothing fancy. Oh, no. He wraps himself up from head to toe so you can't see his face. And he wheezes away like an old dog so no one can recognize his voice.
Wheezes? That's not wheezing. That's the way he talks. So I gather.
972.
But the tales they tell about him, you'd laugh till you burst your tripes.
I'm sure I would.
He drinks, mind.
Drinks?
Oh, like a hole in the ground. Famous for it.
He's never touched a drop. I mean, from what I've heard.
Oh, not in public. No. Goes to some great ball. No, thank you. Not for me. Oh, no. He puts it away at home. Wakes up in the morning, rubs his eyes, and the first thing he does, he shouts, "Vodka!" So in runs his valet with a glass. Fixed himself up a tube behind his desk, he has. Leans down, takes a pull on it, no one the wiser.
How do you know all this, may I ask?
Can't hide it from the servants, can you? The valet and the coachman have got tongues in their heads. Then again, he's on the road, say, going about his business, and he keeps the bottle in his little bag.
The traveler discreetly pushes the traveling bag out of the driver's sight.
And his housekeeper
What about her?
runs circles around him, she does, like a fox round his tail. She's the one who wears the trousers. The people aren't half so frightened of him as they are of her.
But at least he's good at his job, you say.
Oh, he's a blessing from heaven, I'll grant him that.
Very cunning, you were saying.
Oh, he creeps around all right.
And then he pounces, yes? I should think some people must get the surprise of their life, mustn't they?
No. Let's be fair now. Give him his due. He don't make no trouble.
No, I mean if no one knows he's coming.
Oh, that's what he thinks. But we all know.
You know.
Oh, some gentleman gets off the train at the
973.
station back there with his greatcoat up to his eyebrows and says, "No, I don't want a cab, thank you. Just an ordinary horse and cart for me." Well, we'd put two and two together, wouldn't we? Say it was you now, creeping along down the road here. The lads would be down there in a cab by now. By the time you got there, the whole town would be as regular as clockwork. And you'd think to yourself, "Oh, look at that, as clean as a whistle. And they don't know I was coming." No, that's why he's such a blessing after the other one. This one believes it.
Oh, I see.
974.
What? You thought we didn't know him? Why, we've got the electric telegraph these days. Take today now. I'm going past the station back there this morning, and the fellow who runs the buffet comes out like a bolt of lightning, arms full of baskets and bottles. "Where are you off to?" I say. "Doing drinks and refreshments for the Inspector General," he says, and he jumps into a carriage and goes flying down the road to here. So there's the Inspector General, all muffled up like a roll of carpet, going secretly along in a cart somewhere. And when he gets there, nothing to be seen but vodka and cold salmon.
Turn around.
To the horse.
Whoa, boy. Whoa.
To the traveler.
Ooh. So what's this then? Don't want to go running into the Inspector General, is that it?
The traveler gestures impatiently for the driver to turn the cart around. Driver to the horse.
Back we go then, boy. Home we go.
He turns the cart around and the traveler takes a swig from his traveling bag.
Though if I know the old devil, he's like as not turned around and gone home again himself.
Now, let's just jot down really quickly at level 1 what Chekhov pulls off in this very simple little play. First of all, notice, it's a 3-part dance. 1, we have the opening scene where a man shows up in a car and then the driver shows up and they begin to exchange words. The audience, of course, understands that this is the Inspector General, but he's trying to kind of be secretive. He wants to show up and he wants to kind of fool people or spy on people or whatever. The driver clearly has some sense of who this guy is. And so the driver then is going to play, can we say, mind games a little bit, maybe we would say, with this guy. Part 2. They begin to have an exchange. Of course, if you're kind of spying and want to know on somebody, then you start asking questions. So we ask questions to the driver. So what's going on with this new Inspector General? And the driver will begin to say things about the Inspector General that he thought he had kept hidden from other people. Like, for example, he drinks vodka, not publicly, but privately, and he does it probably more than he should, right? Creating even a straw that goes to his vodka so he can sit and drink from behind his desk. And his housekeeper is the one that basically runs the show. She, quote unquote, wears the trousers, if you will, has all of the power. Finally, number 3. At the end of this little play, we then will have the Inspector General who will say, you know what, I don't think that I am going to go to the town because the driver's already made the suggestion that I kind of know how things are going to go down. It's going to be told somewhere in the town that the Inspector General is going to. By the way, let's point out the proverbial we throughout this entire play. The driver keeps saying, "Oh, don't worry, we know." That is to say, we got a class distinction going on here. We have the upper class, we have the lower class. Let's jump to 2A really quickly and take a couple of notes. One major theme here is clear, and that is, you can have class distinctions, but the people in the upper class, they may think they get away with stuff, but the people in the lower class, they know. That is to say, you can't fool those people. Sooner or later, they will figure it out. Or another way to say it is, those people are not as dumb as maybe the upper class would want to think of them as, right? Notice as well, another major message here is, you can lead people to do certain things. What did the driver probably want the Inspector General not to do? Go to the town. How did he get him to not go to the town? By sharing enough information with the Inspector General that he was like, uh-oh, they're on to me. I better not go to that town. In other words, the driver is able to get what he wants, namely that the Inspector General not go to the town, to turn around and to go back. Let's jump to 2B really quickly. We said at the beginning that this was a work of comedy. Jot down really quickly at 2B, why is this comedic? Why is this humorous? What makes this funny? Notice that we gave some definitions of comedy early on, and one of the things we said was involvement in dramatic irony. Jot down, what is the dramatic irony of this play? Again, dramatic irony, what the audience knows that a certain character in the play does not know. And of course, the dramatic irony here is what? Well, obviously, we know as an audience that in fact this is the Inspector General. He's trying to hide that that's what he is. And we know that the driver knows that's who he is. So the driver is playing a certain kind of head game with this guy, using the proverbial we to kind of designate all of the peasants, and of course talking about him instead of you, that is to say, whoever that Inspector General is, right? At 3A, relationships to other texts that you maybe know of. What is for you a similar kind of text where you will have a character who is trying to hide his or her identity, and somebody actually realizing or knowing that, and then is going to use that in some way? By the way, Shakespeare plays, we do this all the time in our comedies. We can think about Midsummer Night's Dream as a classic example. That is to say, you can have people on stage who don't know who a certain character is, but the audience knows that stuff. And so the audience gets to kind of enjoy the confusion or the misunderstandings. Much Ado About Nothing is a classic example of this, a play that you'll study in your freshman year and then beyond as well. Finally, at 3B, how do you relate to a text like this? Well, let's ask it this way. What was a time in your life when you knew something about someone, but you pretended to not know that something about someone? But then you started dropping little tiny hints to just see how they would respond. Is that a form of lying in your estimation, or is that just joking, right? How about this one? What was a time when you tried to spy or kind of sneak up on someone and it backfired? That is to say, you thought you were being kind of sneaky. The classic example of this was the student who thought he would check his girlfriend's phone when she was out of the room to see if in fact he was getting, what kind of text she was getting and that kind of thing. And they played a joke on him with his best friend, who started sending texts to her phone like he was somehow interested in her. And of course, it was a complete game. The boyfriend got really mad really fast, and then they were able to show that in fact the best friend was kind of messing with him, right? And he was the one sending it, but he was sending it because she had asked him to. And they had this whole thing set up because she knew that he was in fact checking her phone. So she would do this thing where she would say, "Hey, I've got to go to the bathroom, I'll be back in a little bit." She would leave her phone laying right there. And she knew that he was checking it, and she caught him. And of course, ultimately, she made the point to him, "You shouldn't be suspicious of me. If you're suspicious of me, then we shouldn't be together." And of course, his best friend kind of helped out in the game. And the guy who kind of had the joke played on him, He said in class later, it was a joke, and after the fact, it was kind of funny to see that they had messed with me, but honestly, that one's kind of rough on me. I would prefer that that not happen. Of course, the counter response was from the girl who said, well, yeah, but you were like spying on me. If you can spy on me, why can't I spy on you? That is to say, notice the Inspector General play will ask the same question. Sometimes you think you're the one doing the spying, and somebody else is doing the spying back on you. Finally, let's remind ourselves at 3B that sometimes, just like with Midsummer Night's Dream, sometimes, and this is the essence often of comedy, that sometimes we think that we are in fact in control of something that we're not actually in control of at all. We've got some sense that we're going to get away with something and we don't actually have the ability to get away with it at all. Well, there you go, an introduction to Chekhov. I hope you'll pick up more of Chekhov and read him. He's a wonderful writer. Thank you.